It's the year 1913, and Arctic explorer Valdemar Stephenson begins on one of his most treacherous expeditions yet. He's deep into the heart of the Arctic, supplies are running low, and Stephenson, cut off from civilization, must rely entirely on the Inuits' traditional diet of animal fats and meat. At first, he's skeptical. After all, everything he learned back home insisted that fruits and vegetables were essential to health. Yet over time, he noticed something surprising. Not only was he thriving, but the Inuit around him seemed to be far healthier than people in Western society. No heart disease, no diabetes, and no signs of the chronic diseases that plague us today. And what's even more surprising is that the Inuit, despite their lack of plant foods, had diverse and healthy gut microbiomes as outlined in this paper in 2017. Which brings us to the question, what if everything we've been told about eating healthy was a lie? Ask any standard dietitian what an ideal diet should look like, and they'll probably describe a balance of various food groups. A colorful mix of fruits and vegetables for essential nutrients, and carbs for energy. Meat? Sure, but only in moderation to avoid those artery-clogging fats we've all been warned about. So why does a diet that flips this idea upside down, a diet without a single vegetable or grain, only meat, seem to deliver such dramatic, life-changing results?
Good. Be a role model for you to get healthy. We can all get healthy.
Yeah,
Just
come
stay
on.
away from Tom's bread.
So how long have you been doing carnivore? Oh, 7 years.
That's
So you
about
wake
it.
up in the morning, what do you have for breakfast?
Strip loin.
What do you have for lunch?
Strip loin.
What do you have for dinner?
Sometimes strip loin in soup.
Back to like dietetics in the beginning. Like back in 1917, the American Dietetics Association was formed. This was formed literally by Seventh-day Adventists. So that from the very, very beginning, the creation of the nutrition science field, these Seventh-day Adventists who are, religiously vegetarian.
The carnivore diet is a diet that consists of exclusively animal products and the absence of anything that comes from a plant. So you only eat meat, eggs, or any other part that comes from an animal, and no fruits, vegetables, or highly processed foods. For me, a typical day of eating consists of about 1 pound of ground beef for lunch, 1.5 to 2 pounds of strip loin for dinner, and sometimes I'll add eggs or salmon. I aim to get roughly 70 to 80% of my calories from fat and the rest from protein. Now, to many people, this may seem like a quick way to manifest a nutrient deficiency or get scurvy, but there's a lot more nuance to this than we may think. Although this diet seems to be a new and trendy concept for most people, the carnivore diet is actually rooted in what humans have been eating the longest. Imagine compressing the entire 300,000 year timeline of modern humans into a single day. For the first 23 hours, we relied almost exclusively on meat. It wasn't until the last hour that we began farming grains with the agricultural revolution, and in the final seconds, processed foods like Oreos and Doritos entered the picture. So this raises the question, is there really a proper human diet? Humans are complex, and yes, we vary slightly from person to person, but in the animal kingdom, each species has a specific diet that best supports its health. No one would question feeding a cow grass or a lion meat, we simply accept that each species has a biological preference. So what if our own biological preference as humans is actually more meat focused than we've been led to believe? This stable isotope analysis, a method that examines chemical markers in ancient bones and teeth, shows that humans living 45,000 to 35,000 years ago derived 80 to 100% of their diet from large ruminant animals like mammoths, reindeer, rhinoceroses, bovines, and horses. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors depended on the meat from large ruminant animals, adapting perfectly to this way of eating. Given that this was our diet for the majority of our human evolution, it's no surprise that our bodies remain optimized to thrive on meat even today. So it's not so surprising that this way of eating has been used to treat diseases. Take the Salisbury steak for example, not the one that you might find in a cafeteria, but the original one. A beef-only patty prescribed as the ultimate elimination diet by Dr. James Salisbury in the 1800s to combat chronic diseases. Fast forward to today, Dr. Sean Baker with Brovero.com, where you can find endless testimonials of people healing their chronic diseases every single day with a carnivore diet. Now you might be thinking, sure, it's great that this diet seems to help people with diseases like inflammation, but what about all of that saturated fat and cholesterol? Well, here's a question for you. How likely is it that something capable of curing so many chronic inflammatory diseases is also the root cause of another, like heart disease? After all, heart disease is actually a pretty new thing, and has only increased as our red meat consumption has gone down. Or this study from 2001 that documented the changes in 3,572 elderly people's serum cholesterol concentrations over 20 years and compared them to the rates of death. They found that the group with the lowest cholesterol also had the lowest rate of survival. And not so surprisingly, the author's interpretation, we are unable to explain our results. So maybe now you're thinking, oh, this is great, maybe red meat isn't actually that bad for me after all. So you go out, stock up on steaks, and then it hits you. What about variety? Not the variety of meats, but the variety of plants that every dietitian seems to recommend. The absence of plants is one of the biggest concerns people have about the carnivore diet, because don't we need nutrients from plants to stay healthy? Well, surprisingly, the answer is no. Our bodies function very differently on a carnivore diet, especially without plants and carbohydrates, meaning many of our nutrient requirements are much lower than you might expect. For example, the recommended daily allowance of vitamin C for men is around 95 milligrams, but without any carbohydrates in the diet, the body needs far less, and can actually be measured in nanograms. Why? Because carbohydrates and vitamin C compete for many of these same transporters into our cells. Without carbs, the body becomes far more efficient at utilizing these small amounts of vitamin C found in the flesh of meat and organ meats. But what about fiber? As you can see, many modern day nutrition advocates rave about fiber, treating it like it's an essential nutrient required for proper gut and bowel function. Yet, how is it that I, for nearly 3 years now, along with hundreds of thousands of others, have been not only fine, but thriving on a diet without any fiber? When you consider this fact, and that populations with little to no fiber intake still have very diverse and healthy gut microbiomes, it's clear that fiber isn't essential. But just because it's not essential, does it have other benefits? One of the most cited benefits of fiber is its role in producing butyrate. Butyric acid is a byproduct of fiber fermentation in the gut, and it's said to feed your gut lining and provide numerous health benefits. Here's the thing, you can get all of those benefits without eating any fiber. For example, butter is a direct source of butyric acid, and on a carnivore diet, your body also produces a ketone called beta-hydroxybutyrate, which not only delivers the same benefits as butyrate, but goes even further in supporting energy and overall health. And on a side note, while the carnivore diet often aligns with a ketogenic diet, where the body often relies on fats instead of carbs for fuel and produces ketones, this isn't the primary point of this diet. Sure, ketogenic diets have a long list of benefits, but staying in ketosis for too long can also lead to its own issues. This is why it's ideal to periodically come out of ketosis by eating only once or twice per day. This triggers a gluconeogenic response, creating a small insulin bump just big enough to kick you out of ketosis. This approach mirrors how our ancestors likely ate, periods of fasting followed by eating until fully satiated whenever food became available. Now back to fiber. The supposed benefits of fiber are actually largely tied to the context of a highly processed food diet. Fiber, being indigestible by humans, essentially acts like a broom, helping to push out other foods that your body doesn't want lingering around. We're told fiber is what keeps us regular, but what if it's actually causing your digestive issues instead? Consider this study. Researchers found that in people with idiopathic constipation, the more fiber that they ate, the worse their constipation became. And for those who went on a zero fiber diet, every single one of them experienced complete remission of their constipation. Now, this might not be so surprising when you realize that fiber is completely indigestible for humans. Instead of being some magical essential nutrient, for many people, fiber seems to act more like an anti-nutrient. But what exactly is an anti-nutrient? Anti-nutrients are essentially natural pesticides found in all plants. There's a reason why you can't just go outside right now and eat any plant that you see. They've developed their own defenses. Unlike animals, which can run away or use claws to protect themselves, plants must rely on chemical warfare to deter predators. These chemicals are still present in the plants we consider edible, but in smaller amounts, allowing us to consume them without getting instantly sick. According to a 1990s paper titled Dietary Pesticides, 99.99% all natural by biochemist Bruce N. Ames, we calculate that 99.99% by weight of the pesticides in the American diet are chemicals that plants produce to defend themselves. And there are potentially thousands of different anti-nutrients in plants, but some of the most common ones include the following. Phytates, found in grains, legumes, and nuts. These bind to minerals like zinc, calcium, and iron, making them harder for your body to absorb. Oxalates, present in food like spinach, almonds, and rhubarb. Oxalates can lead to kidney stone formation and interfere with calcium absorption. Lectins, found in beans, grains, and some vegetables. Lectins can damage the gut lining and interfere with other nutrient absorption. Tannins, found in coffee, tea, and some fruits. They can inhibit iron absorption and irritate the gut. See, the problem with anti-nutrients is that they don't just block the nutrients in the plants themselves, they can also interfere with the absorption of the nutrients of the other foods that you are eating with them. So, for example, pairing a steak with a salad could mean that the anti-nutrients within the greens are blocking some of the nutrients you could have had in your steak. These anti-nutrients are also what give many of the vegetables that bitter taste. But if you want to minimize this, cooking, fermenting, or soaking plants can reduce the levels of anti-nutrients, but doesn't eliminate them entirely. The carnivore diet just bypasses this issue altogether by cutting plants out completely. Some proponents of plant-based diets argue that anti-nutrients have a hormetic effect. Essentially, that consuming small amounts of these toxins can make your body more resilient. But this seems a little backwards to seek nourishment from something that actively works against nutrient absorption. But if you take something else that has a hormetic effect, like lifting weights for example, the entire point of resistance training is to stress your body so that it grows. That kind of hormetic response makes a lot more sense, as that is the whole point of doing it in the first place. But when it comes to fueling our bodies, the goal should be to optimize nutrient utilization, giving our body what it needs in the most efficient and bioavailable way possible, without unnecessary barriers. And this is one of the core principles of the carnivore diet. It's the ultimate elimination diet. Not just eliminating random foods, but focusing on removing what is unfit for humans. It's not an elimination diet in the traditional sense of cutting out foods arbitrarily. It's about eating only what we know humans have thrived on for our entire existence on this planet. So what is the carnivore diet? It is the closest modern approximation of an optimal human diet. While there may be slight variations to suit individual needs, the core idea remains the same. Our physiology has evolved to thrive on meat, primarily from large ruminant animals. Just like how every other species on this planet has a specific diet that optimizes their health and survival, humans do as well.